Hello, Brad here, just to say we're super proud that the Friday 5pm podcast is sponsored by the Malt Miller, the UK's best home brew store.
We use the Malt Miller for all of our homebrew experiments, as well as tapping them up for advice and binging on their awesome YouTube channel all the time.
That's why whenever we release a homebrew video, we put a recipe kit live on the Malt Miller, so you can brew with the exact same amazing ingredients that we did. The same ingredients used by pro brewers.
So alongside the Malt Miller's nitro-flushed hops, cold-stored yeast and milled-to-order malts, you can pick up recipe kits for our 5 Points Best Bitter, Russian River West Coast IPA, and now the fastest beer in the world, a hazy session IPA that goes from grain to glass in less than 48 hours.
Sign up to their newsletter at tinyurl.com/Malt Miller to get 5% off your first order. With the Malt Miller's amazing customer service and Jonny's 48-hour recipe, you could order the ingredients on a Monday and be drinking the beer by the weekend.
Speaking of which, it's Friday.
It's 5pm.
So enjoy this week's Friday 5pm podcast. Good evening, Beer Geeks. It's the second Friday 5pm of the year, and doesn't it feel good to be releasing videos again, Brad?
Mate, it's about the best feeling in the world.
You serious?
When it comes to my feelings towards making videos and YouTubes. Oh, yeah.
It's been real nice to have comments to read through again. Like, the thing that I've probably missed most isn't necessarily the filming or the releasing of the videos. It's always having something to do when you're bored, which is answer YouTube comments. I've made my life sound incredibly tragic right now. But that is what I've really missed. And it's been really nice to have so many on this week's video, which we'll be diving into in a little bit. But before we do, we've got a new little segment to add. Well, I say a new segment, the first ever segment probably to add to this chaotic podcast. One of the things that came out of our annual survey that we did last week and we're plugging was that people wanted us to talk a little bit more about beer, Bradley.
Beer? On a beer podcast?
Very weird, very out of the left field.
Jesus. What's the world coming to?
I know, madness. So, yeah, we thought that we would try every week to make sure that we mentioned a delicious beer that had some kind of impact. Well, it doesn't have to be a delicious beer. It could be a terrible beer that had some kind of impact on us in a sort of beer of the week format, but obviously keeping it loosey-goosey and ready to be derailed at any point, as is the way that we run this. So, Bradley, what have you been drinking much this week? Have you got a beer to pick out?
I actually have been drinking quite a lot in proper boozers as well. Not on my own, with my girlfriend and some friends. And it's been amazing. It was my girlfriend's birthday, so we were supposed to be in Paris. Eurostar decided to cancel our tickets about 2 weeks ago. We weren't welcome anymore. So,
well, I think France decided to, rather than...
Well, yeah, France. Okay, France. Which is fair enough, because, epidemic and all. But yeah, it was quite disappointing.
We're dirty foreigners full of Omicron.
That's it, right? So we went around went around Spitalfields first of all, and then we went the next day around the West End. And I took her to a lot of great old man pubs. So in Spitalfields, we went to Pride of Spitalfields, which is a little kind of tucked away boozer off of Brick Lane that I don't think loads of people know about, although the crowd in there is pretty... it's sort of a mix between old men and incredibly hipsters that have just...
Do the hipsters still hang about near Spitalfields? I thought they'd have been priced out by now.
I think they're probably rich kids or something that live around there. But there's some quite flamboyant outfits. There's a girl that was wearing... They look like a full leather sort of catsuit. Quite funky.
In the middle of the day?
Yeah, it was sort of like around 4 p.m, something like that.
Wow.
So yeah, it's quite full on fashion, but also like...
I guess you never know when it's going to turn into a night.
No, exactly. At the Pride of Spitalfields, mate, it always turns into...
It's always night at the Pride of Spitalfields.
Yeah. So that was on Saturday, and I had a pint of Pride in there, and I was like, "Ooh, that's pretty good." And then on Sunday, we went around the West End. We went to the Harp, the Lamb and Flag, which is quite... I haven't been there loads, but I've been there over the years. Quite an interesting backstory to that pub in that it was a sort of boxing venue, and they used to call it, I think, the Blood and Bucket or the Bloody Bucket, and it's just really dark and a really sort of heavy dark wood hardly any windows. Sounds quite claustrophobic, doesn't it? But quite nice, Pride on there. Then we went to the Cross Keys, which is a sort of pub that I love in just off of the Plaza sort of bit in Covent Garden. Then
is that a Badger's Ales pub?
I'm not sure. What was I drinking in there? I had a Pilsner Urquell. I broke my tradition there, Jonny. I had Pilsner Urquell in there. And then we went to a couple of other sort of Fuller's type pubs. We went to the Hymns as well, which I would never go to. It's quite a tourist trap. And I drank some. I drank some. No, not Oedipus. I drank. Delirium, Tremens, which was tasting pretty good, but very strong. And then we sort of topped the night off. We went to a French brasserie Zadel, and I didn't drink any London Pride in there because they don't sell it.
Because it was a French brasserie.
Yeah, but I had a giant meat platter, which is called a charcut. And it was too meaty for even me. I couldn't eat it. It was way too meaty.
Good Lord.
We finished the night off with some amazing cocktails in Bar American, which is their sort of kind of 1920s themed cocktail bar, a subterranean cocktail bar. And I was drinking sort of throwback 100-year-old cocktails and stuff. Pretty cool. So
when I said, what's your beer of the week, you've mostly mentioned cocktails and meat platters.
Meat platters are my beer of the week, are meat platters. No, my beer of the week was London Pride because, it's a classic and I do love drinking it, but it's not my choice all of the time. But this weekend, it mostly was most of the time. And I was not disappointed. And, it was great to be back in the Harp because I don't think I've been there since the pandemic started. And I put some sort of quite a lot of story posts on my Instagram, my personal Instagram, at Mr. Brad Evans. And I got so many comments from people, friends and followers saying, oh my God, is the Harp open? Everyone was shocked that the Harp was open. So I've put a lot of people back onto knowing that the Harp is indeed back open. So I was
it's one of those pubs that probably really, really suffered during the pandemic because it's city centre, small, dark, cosy. So good to know it's flying again. I had a very different experience of drinking. In that most of my drinking obviously happens at home at the moment. But I went to a new local brewery that opened up. They released their first beer in October last year, so incredibly fresh. But they're called Baron Brewing, and they're in Hertfordshire, about half an hour away from my new home.
Nice.
And it's a tiny little place tucked away on a farm. I always seem to get into scrapes when I'm on adventures to find breweries. So it was one of those drives where you're like, I'm going to ground and damage my car at some point. And I did, actually, on the way back out. But yeah, properly gnarly drive down to it in a farm. And this guy, Jack, he's built the building himself. He's collected all the equipment. Some of it's come from China, but collected lots of different vessels from other breweries and assembled it himself. And now he's making. I had a lovely Pilsner, which I think was called Blimp. A lovely table beer called Day Tripper, 2.8%. Really, really hoppy and cracker dry table beer that's absolutely delicious and crisp. And then lots of juicy IPAs. So I had a absolutely banging American Pale Ale, New England Pale Ale, which was Sabro. Sabro Mosaic? No, Sabro Eldorado. It was a great little hop combination that was properly pina colada, properly pineapple and coconut. It was really, really good.
Quite a variety there.
Yeah, I mean, he was saying he never wants to brew the same beer twice. He wants to sort of go down the kernel route. So I tell you that beer was delicious. You'll never be able to get it. But there will be lots of other delicious beer coming out, hopefully. And yeah, he's got a talent. He used to work at McCullen's, which is like the fairly local real ale place. And he said they brought him in to be like the modernizer. And then they were like, well, no, that's too modern. So he sort of branched out and gone his own way. And he's, it's a really small space. It doesn't have a tap room yet, but it will. But you can swing by and pick up cans. And he's got a web shop. And it's, if you're looking for a new brewery, you want to have a new experience, and you love hazy beer, he's definitely worth a go. And a lovely guy as well. So I'm going to be visiting there a lot, I reckon.
Didn't you have a beer?
12 cans.
Nice. 12 cans. Bloody hell.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
a lot of cans. You're going to be
You've got to
all right.
support your local business, Brad.
Nice. Didn't you have a beer called Lanky Boy? I quite like the sound of that.
Yes, Lanky Boy. That was the pina colada-esque beer. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
He's got lovely branding. He was saying that because his surname's Baron, and he's called it Baron Brewing, and then kind of realised that actually Baron Brewing sounds very old man real ale.
Yeah.
So he said he's gone completely the other direction with the branding. And he's found a great artist. He does cool illustrations and all the names. He's got Lanky Boy, Sock Puppet, Blimp. Lots of sort of silly, cartoonesque, I guess, names.
Silly fun names.
Ensure that Baron remains frivolous, silly, and accessible.
The brew house that Jack built. Nice.
So that's our week in beer. I should also say that I've also been doing a lot of homebrew, Bradley. Well, not home brewing, but home cellaring. So I kegged the first batch of our West Coast IPA, which is our collaboration with now probably a not-so-secret, very famous American West Coast brewer. And that is tasting pretty good. There's quite a few things I'm going to tweak ready for batch 2, so I'm glad I did a batch 2. Going to do 2 batches, because I think I'd have let my man down if we'd come out with that. But I did a test batch of a Pilsner, which is actually much later in the year we're doing that video. But I poured off to check the gravity to see if I could go up to the diacetyl rest. Looks like I've slightly missed my chance for the diacetyl rest, which is a bit unfortunate. But it's down at 10:08, so nice dry Pilsner. Probably a bit drier than I wanted. But it is singing. The all full cone SARS that I've added is just beautiful. Really fresh grass and lemon and kind of strawberry notes to it as well, which is going to be enhanced by the melanoidin I've added in lieu of a decoction. I'm really excited. It's probably the best beer at this point that I've ever brewed. I'm really happy with it, and the G40 did me a solid. So yeah, exciting stuff happening in the Brewdio.
Amazing. Can't wait to try that.
Shall we talk about the video?
Go on then. I guess that's what we're here for. Traditionally.
Yeah. Used to be. Now we're just here for the derailments. So this week was our Big In 2022 video. We've been doing the Big Ins since 2016, I think was the first one.
Yeah.
So this is number 6, in which we went through our predictions for 2021, see how close we got. And I think table beer was the closest we got to being right. And then we picked out some trends for this year, which I think lots of people already disagree with. There's lots of comments sort of laughing at the idea of brown ale. Just generally laughing at the idea of brown ale, but also the idea of it coming back. But, I mean, it wasn't just brown ale. We were talking about brown ales, porters, dry stouts, bitters, those kind of beers coming back.
Yeah,
Normcore, as we called it.
Naughty guys.
Exactly, multi guys and crispy boys. So yeah, I mean, I hope that brown ales do come back, but yeah, we're talking about a family of beers that I think are gonna have a slightly trendy moment, rather than just brown ales coming back, which would be quite the reversal of the beer scene. Did you find any comments that you really enjoyed?
I did, mate. I did. I found quite a few, but I quite like this one from Chris King, which I think everyone should pay attention to. He says, last year I didn't pay much attention to this video, and then I found myself buying and loving the things from the breweries Jonny and Brad recommended, so I'm going to pay more attention this time round. So if everyone could please do the same, I think we can all learn from Chris's mistake there.
Yeah, and you live, you learn there, Chris. Thanks for being so honest.
I'm joking, of course. I called you Mystic Jonny in the video because of your wild and probably spot on predictions, but at this point they seem quite wild, some of them. But yeah, so I enjoyed that comment. We had a comment from across the oceans from Dave Shook out in America. He said, "When I started drinking craft beer in California back in 1992, all breweries had the same menu: a pale ale, amber ale, IPA, stout, brown, and a fruited peach, raspberry, etc. And they might have a seasonal." So that's kind of a stark contrast to what the sort of like NEPA times that we're in now, where you go to a tap room and it's pure haze for days, numbers 1 through 10, hazy.
It was an interesting comment because when I read it, I couldn't work out whether he was trying to say that he considered that diverse or whether he was saying he was bored of that. I guess he's saying,
yeah. I thought it sounded like he was bored of being diverse, and I was like, kind of weird. But I was excited, as you were, by the prospect of such diversity.
Yeah, I mean, if I walked into a bar, or well, not so much a bar because I guess a lot of bars probably do have a little bit more diversity. But walked into a brewery where you could have a pale ale, amber ale, IPA, stout, brown, and fruited wheat, you'd be like, sweet, I'll take one of all of them each time I come back to the bar.
Yeah,
you just don't really see that anymore. The last time I really saw that was when we were in Florida and we went to Rat Brewing, which was like sort of the OG experimental brewery in St. Pete, and the beers that we had weren't actually very good, but you know, they had about 20 taps and every single one was a different style. And I remember looking at that going, I can't remember the last time it was like this, and I haven't seen it since. It's just sort of died. You know, all breweries now have to have a specialty, and almost exclusively that specialty is going to be Imperial Stout, New England IPA, or Pilsner. And that, you know, that's great for bars because it means that you can pick and choose, and there's so many amazing people who really focus in on what they do. But when it comes to the taproom experience, it's a little bit of a shame.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to Rap. It was like they had like lots of Belgium styles, didn't they? I seem to remember.
Yeah, there was lots of Belgian styles, lots of English styles. I don't think there were really any really hoppy numbers. I think clearly that wasn't what the brewers there loved making. But what it meant was there was lots more diversity, and I think that if you can build a brand that isn't based around IPA, the brewers can have a lot more fun. And I think it's almost at the point where a lot of brewers don't really like brewing the IPAs. They're bored of the endless repetition and they want to try something else. So I really hope that, you know, a lot of the trends in beer happen when brewers get bored, and they start sort of pushing other stuff onto us. And I think that maybe that's starting to happen. You can see so many modern brewers making bitters and robust porters and stuff because I think they're trying to mix up their brew days and let younger voices coming through have an influence and come up with recipes, and they're not necessarily making these juicy IPAs. And also the West Coast IPAs as well. I think that return, which we flagged in the video, is in direct reaction to how juicy and sweet the New England IPAs are.
Oh, 100%, mate. Do you think, are we going to reach a point where brewing IPAs in a country that doesn't produce those sort of like New World hops becomes a sort of question of ethics, where, you know, like transporting all this stuff around the world, like should we be, you know, should countries that don't produce those things be producing stuff that's maybe more malt forward or uses sort of native hops and stuff? Do you think we're ever going to get there?
It's a great question. I think if you have local hops that you can use, then maybe it will. We touched on it in the video, but I was kind of surprised and a bit disappointed in all the breweries using fresh American hops. I thought, you know, the expense, the emissions that it would take to grow those hops, pick those hops, freeze those hops, ship those hops frozen, land those hops, sort those hops, ship them out to all the different breweries, all still frozen, and then have them used that day. It's just kind of mind-boggling when, you know, a lot of these breweries, 100 miles up the road, you could get completely fresh Harlequin hops, which are juicy as fuck.
I think that we might start to see brands that are more sort of focused on that mission of not kind of a bit hyper locality and things like that. Maybe outside of farmhouse brewing, you know, brands that want to be more responsible outside of that sphere, but they kind of want to stay hyper local too.
And we do see a couple of those brands like Utopian in the UK make all sort of German and particularly Czech style beers, but they only use English ingredients. And chatting to the guys that work there, they've said, part of it is a bit of sort of national pride, but the other part of it is, it's a way, they've managed to make it work. So why would they not want to be more sustainable by using local ingredients? And I think it's going to be a couple of years, we're still, although lots of us talk the good talk about saying we want a more sustainable world, we're worried about global heating, none of us are really taking really broad steps. We're still, or at least we still have stuff that we'll let slide. I definitely let it slide. I'll drink imported beer or drink American hops. And I make my changes in other ways by being mostly vegetarian and stuff like that. But I think it will have to affect beer eventually. I think it has to.
It's a quandary, isn't it? Like stuff like cold chain and, all of that good stuff is kind of bad for the world, but it is delicious. And as
most bad things are.
Yeah. I suppose it's cheaper. Better for the world that they bring those lovely beers here than we all jump on a plane and go out there to try them in person.
Probably that's very true, but I mean, like I say, the ultimate is, and Charles Farram and other hop growers are working really hard on this. Is producing British juicy hops, and Germany have been doing. Mandarina Bavaria is a really beautiful, very aromatic hop. I'm always surprised by how little these new varieties from the UK and from Germany are actually being used. I think if you were trying to build, particularly, if I started a brewery tomorrow and I was coming up with my American Pale Ale recipe, there's no way I'd use American hops because A, they're incredibly expensive, B, they're incredibly unsustainable, and C, they are under incredible demand. Whereas, Mandarina Bavaria is I think it's something like 60% of the price of Citra, so nearly half the price. And it's a beautiful hop, and it will set your beer apart from other people's because it will have a slightly different aroma. I just think that there's not enough breweries doing that, not enough breweries having the wherewithal and the confidence to go, you know what, I love what everybody else is doing, but I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to make it slightly more sustainable. So if you're thinking of founding a brewery, do that.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good idea. In fact, I'm kind of angry at myself for putting it out on the air, but I genuinely think we're going to see more brands that are hyper localized, that are outside of farmhouse brewing, and want to be more responsible. But I also think that it's that thing like we're saying. Everyone wants to drink hazy IPAs. Everyone wants to drink hazy IPAs that have got Citra and Mosaic in and stuff. So if Mandarina Bavaria, it's not shorthand for a good time or what people might be looking for in the masses. They might know the word Citra, they might know the word Mosaic, or whatever it might be. It's kind of a matter of education, isn't it, and just getting used to these different hops and understanding what they taste like as well.
100%. And it's a real issue. I'm all in favour of breweries naming the hops, naming the malts, naming the yeasts, and giving us as much information as we can. But some work then has to be done to ensure that people don't just pick up the Citras, the Mosaics, because those hops and that hop combination are just incredibly delicious. There's a reason why everybody loves it. But that's not to say that, the Sabro Eldorado combination that I had isn't fucking amazing and entirely different.
Yeah.
And people in the comments, all over the comments of this video, there's people sort of saying, I'm sick of New England IPA. And, that's a symptom of the fact that people aren't being daring and experimental enough in the hops that they're using. And last year we said that it was going to change, that, we were seeing more unusual hops going in along with these hero hops. And sadly, that hasn't quite happened as much as we'd like. And in fact, to stand out, they've started shipping frozen fucking hops in a bid. How do you we know Citra sells, but everybody else is using Citra. How do we make it stand out? Oh, we'll bring it over fresh at great fucking expense and through huge damage to the environment. Brilliant. I'm probably being a bit too harsh on these breweries. If I was offered it, I'd be like, yeah, fucking hell, let's give that a go. It sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound amazing. The more and more you're talking about, it's making me thirstier.
The more you want one.
Fresh American. Oh, it's like
go.
peas, freshly frozen peas, mate. That's what it is.
Yep.
Of the hop world. Beautiful.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
It is. So the comment that I found and enjoyed was from Razor97, who said, I'd love to see West Coast IPA make a comeback, but unfortunately we'll never see it like it was in the past. The modern Westie will be a hybrid cross between New England IPA and West Coast IPA, according to the brewing trends here in the States. To which I would say, yeah, you're 100% correct. I think a lot of West Coast, or so-called West Coast IPAs, are going to be that mountain style, where it's probably a juicy yeast, probably some juicy hops, or maybe some more West Coast inspired hops, but then fermented drier, much lighter body and much higher bitterness. But I would consider a mountain IPA still an offshoot of the New England IPA. So when we talked about it in this video, we were talking about probably pin bright or lightly hazy, savory, pine, resin, grapefruit, lemon, kind of notes, and definite malt character. That's what we think is going to come back. Not in a big way, not in any way that's even going to threaten. It's going to threaten one line on the bar in a good beer bar. But what we meant is in this video is, if you love West Coast IPA, I reckon this year, or by the end of this year, you're going to be able to get it pretty readily compared to what it is at the moment, or what it was last year, where you're scrabbling around the shop asking, have you got anything West Coast? And the people just shrugging their shoulders.
It's kind of it's going to be the labradoodle of the beer world, right? So you've got your West Coast. Go with me here, Jonny. Which was a poodle, a full size poodle that was incredibly intelligent and sharp, angular, maybe a bit brutal and bitter as a dog species, or
have you met a poodle?
They're very intelligent. They're very, very intelligent.
Yes, but they're incredibly loving.
Go with me, Jonny. So you've got the intelligence and the strength and the sort of silliness of a poodle, and then you cross it with the sort of soft loveliness of a Labrador, which is your soft New England IPA, and you fuse the two together into a hybrid of a Labradoodle, which is both. So it's got the kind of intelligence and the kind of slight bitterness of a poodle, mixed with the soft sweetness of a Labrador.
I haven't come with yet. I've got off the train. I've hit the emergency brake.
The crazy train. Jump back on board the crazy train.
Labrador is New England IPA. I'm 100% on board with.
Yes.
Poodle as West Coast.
What about a cocker? I don't know. What other dog breeds? Okay, let's put it out to everyone. What dog breeds mixed together would represent a West Coast and East Coast? West Coast and New England, and then the sort of new hybrid, which is probably coming our way.
Yeah, please send us your answers. Put it in our Discord forum if you're a Patreon, or hell, record it and send it into us, and we'll play all the responses we get in next week's podcast. I'm into that. Or I don't know, just tell us on Twitter what a West Coast IPA is if it was a dog. We had other stuff to talk about, but to be honest, we're running out of time, and also I want that to be the final thought as everybody walks away on their Friday evening, distracted. Their family go, "What's up?" And you're like, "I'm just thinking what kind of dog a West Coast IPA would be."
Yeah.
So we're going to leave you with that. Please do send us your thoughts. We'd love to hear them. And otherwise, have a really brilliant weekend. And if you haven't already, check out this week's Big in 2022, because there's lots of tips about what to drink for the next 12 months. Love and beer. The Bubble and Friday 5pm podcasts are brought to you by the nerds behind YouTube's craft beer channel. You can watch over 400 mini documentaries at youtube.com/the craft beer channel. And if you love what we do, support us via Patreon and get access to merchandise and our amazing Discord forum, a positive and welcoming space for everyone who loves beer, food and homebrewing. Love and beer.